Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.
Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode of the Golden Age. This is our series of weekly Warhammer Fantasy Battle Reports, and this is Battle Report number 78. It is fought between King Khalifa as well as myself. My friend King Khalifa is bringing the Schwarzwald Free Companies, a 3,000 point Empire army, and I'm bringing the Garden of Nurgle, a 3,000 point Chaos Legion of Nurgle army. So this is another Warhammer Roulette battle report where we randomly determine which armies we'll be fighting against, which armies I will be playing, and of course what point value I'll be playing at as well. My buddy King Khalifa is bringing the Empire, I'm bringing Chaos Legion Nurgle, and we're playing it at 3,000 points. So we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So with that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought, or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Valor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then the hell with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
So the scenario rules for this one is Battle Line. It is the most typical game of Warhammer Fantasy Battle there is, with standard deployment rules as well as standard victory conditions. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go ahead and talk about the battle plan real quick. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see in this photo, we are playing on a 4x6 table. King Khalifa is deployed on the near side of the table, and I'm deployed on the far side of the table. Pretty much the plan on this one is I'm going to try to break his left-hand flank as quickly as I possibly can. And if I can't break it, I'm going to try to delay it as much as possible because he has a pretty powerful left-hand flank. He has a Hellblaster volley gun over there on the left-hand side that could cause all kinds of problems for me if he opens up directly into my main lines. At the same time, he's also got that steam tank. He's got the Panzer Wolf over there on the left-hand side. And finally, he has the Vagrant Brotherhood, a huge unit of 21 Inner Circle Knights that is led by a Captain of the Empire. These guys are also packing great weapons. They have the Steel Standard. They also got the Crown of Command that unit, so it's a very hard nut to crack. Pretty much what my plan is to occupy those and tar pit those units down by either using my Tallyman, which is my huge horde of Plague Bearers over on the left-hand side, or by using my Nurglings to kind of time out for the round. While that's occurring, I'm going to try to sweep around the right-hand side with my Plague Drones from the Ruination of Prague as well as the Droning Horrors. Hopefully I could destroy the Red Company, which is located on the right-hand flank, and from there I could sweep across his main battle lines and head directly to the Black Company, and hopefully I can catch him right in the middle by using my Dustman to engage him in a pincer attack and destroy him that way as well. That's pretty much the scheme I'm kind of going with for this battle plan. Of course, I'll be using my Demon Prince to assault on the left-hand flank as well to lend some support to my Tallyman, and at the same time using my Horticolic Slimex to support my Dustman as they go down the barrel straight towards the Black Company. And that's pretty much the battle plan I'm going on with this one. So with the battle plan over with, let's go ahead and talk about deployment real quick for the Schwarzwald Free Companies. Over here on the left-hand side, at the top of the tower, that is Donner. It is an Imperial Great Cannon. Right next to him on the right-hand side is Blitzen, which is a Hellblaster volley gun. And then right next to him on the right-hand side is one of two steam tanks in this army. That's the Panzer Wolf. It is a normal steam tank without any upgrades. And that's going to be a really tough nut to crack because steam tanks are absolutely terrifying to go up against, especially if you try to engage in close combat. Right here in the center of the battlefield is where most of King Khalifa's military forces are located at. Starting on the left-hand side, that is a unit called the Vagrant Brotherhood. It is a unit of 20 Inner Circle Knights with full command. Those guys are packing great weapons, shields, full plate armor, as well as barded war horses, and they also have the steel standard as well, which is really good for rerolling ones on charges and pursuits and all that kind of goodness stuff. So plus it takes away any penalties they get for having barding as well. Right next, and also leading that unit as well is Sir Tybalt Kraus, the Vagrant Knight. He's a captain of the Empire. He's packing a great weapon, shield, as well as full plate armor. He's riding a barded warhorse, and he's also bringing the Crown of Command. So now that unit's also stubborn as well. Next to him on the right-hand side, that is a unit called the Blue Company. It is a unit of 20 halberdiers, which is halberds, and that's it. They're attached to the much larger unit to the right-hand side, which is the Black Company. It is a unit of 37 great swords with full command. They're packing great weapons as well as full plate armor, and they also have the standard discipline, giving them +1 to their leadership score as well. And leading that unit as well is 3 of King Khalifa's main characters. First off in the center, he has Gregor von Königsmark. That is his Archlector, is also his general. He's packing a great weapon as well as the armor of meteoric iron, as well as the White Cloak of Ulrich. Also located in that unit as well is Victor Helsbrad of the Wilds. He is a battle wizard lore. He's got a level 4 lore of life. He's also packing a Book of Asher, giving him +1 to his dispels and casting totals. And he's also got Life Bloom, Earth Blood, Flesh to Stone, Throne Divines, as well as Regrowth for his spells. So he is packing a lot of good old-fashioned lore of life spells on that one. And then also in that unit is Dieter Moons, the Griffin Guard. He is a captain of the Empire. He's got a Battle Standard Bearer upgrade. He's got a great weapon, shield, full plate armor. He's also carrying the Griffin Banner, which means they get twice as many points for their ranks in combat resolution. And in the back behind him, that is Maximilian Max. That is the Battle Wizard rather. He's a level 2 lore of metal. He's got enchanted blades of Iban as well as glittering robes. And then right in front of them is a unit called Rommel's Rangers. Those are the skirmishers you see up front. That is a unit of 10 archers, which is right in front of the Black Company, and a 5-man archer detachment on the left-hand side covering the Blue Company. And that makes up his deployment here in the center lines. And finally, rounding out King Khalifa's right-hand flank, up in the front, that is another 5-man detachment of archers from Rommel's Rangers. Right behind them is the Red Company, is a unit of 20 halberdiers, just equipped with halberds and light armor. They're attached to the Black Company there on the left-hand side. And finally, making up King Khalifa's right-hand flank, that is the Panzer Baron. It is a steam tank. So that's right, King Khalifa is bringing 2 steam tanks in this battle list, and so I have to really worry about that part, because steam tanks can really tar pit units and really mess up with your program if you're not real careful. So I'm going to have to find some kind of way to gamesmith and mitigate those steam tanks impacting my army too much. So with the deployment for the Schwarzwald Free Companies, we're going to go directly across the battlefield to my deployment area and talk about the Garden of Nurgle. So right up front, using scouting rules, exactly 12 inches away from King Khalifa's main lines are 2 units of 3 Nurglings apiece. On the left-hand side is the Inglorious, and on the right-hand side is the Degenerates. And like I said earlier, my plan is to have these guys bog down the steam tank, the Hellblaster volley gun, or the Inner Circle Knights, and try to keep those guys occupied from engaging my army. So that's what those Nurglings are perfect for, and that's exactly where I'm putting them. Here's a close-up of my center lines. That huge horde of Plague Bearers is called the Tallymen. It is a unit of 39 Plague Bearers of Nurgle with full command. They're also carrying Plague Swords, and also leading that unit is Barnabas the Scrivener. He is my Herald of Nurgle. He's also my Battle Standard Bearer, and he has the Lesser Locus of Virulence on him as well, giving their poison attacks 5 up in close combat, which is really good to have because Plague Bearers have a shockingly low weapon score for Demons of Chaos. Right behind them is the general of my army, that is Hastur, the King in yellow. He is a Demon Prince of Nurgle. He's also my general. He's equipped with Chaos Armor as well as Demonic Flight. Don't let his huge, baggy, saggy body fool you. This boy can fly. He's also got a level 4 Lore of Death. He's also packing the Sword of Striking, Charm Shield, as well as the Dragonbane Gem. And he's also got the Chaos Familiar to give him an extra spell. He's got Scaled Skin to give him his 1-up armor save, as well as Soul Feeder, so that way when he kills people, he can hopefully heal himself if he should take any damage of any sort. And then right next to him on the right-hand side, that is Horticulix Slimex. He is my Exalted Hero of Nurgle. He's equipped with a Halberd as well as Chaos Armor and Shield. He's also got the Dragon Helm as well as a Dawnstone, so that way he gets 2-up ward saves against flaming attacks, as well as reroll failed armor saves. And he's also got the Nurgle's Rot Chaos Gift, which means he can cause some wounds if people are in base contact with him, as well as the Poisonous Slime abilities, so that way he gets poison attack as well. And he is riding Mulch, which is a Chaos War Shrine of Nurgle. And that pretty much makes up my center deployment for this battle report. Right next to my center line is another unit of Chaos Warriors of Nurgle. There's 23 of those guys. They are called the Dustmen. They have full command and they're equipped with additional hand weapons. They get 2 attacks as well as shields, and there's also Chaos Armor as well. And they also have the Standard of Discipline in that unit as well, giving them +1 to their leadership. And leading that unit, of course, is one and only Festus the Leech Lord Empowered. He is a special character. He's also got the level 3 lore of Nurgle, and he's a really good character to have because he gives this unit 5 regen. He also gives them poisoned attacks, hence the reason why I have additional hand weapons on those guys, so that way I can help them out as well. Not to mention, Festus the Leech Lord also has that beautiful Shrouding spell, which is a balance spell that puts everybody within 12 inches in hard cover, which is going to be really important because my opponent's bringing 3 cannons and a Hellblaster volley gun in his army list, so that's really going to help me out as well. And that makes it my center deployment for this one. And finally, making my far right hand flank, I have 2 units of 3 Plague Drones of Nurgle. On the left hand side are the Droning Horrors, on the right hand side is the Ruination of Prague. Both units have full command, so they have Standard Bearers and Musicians as well as Champions. They're also packing Plague Swords, Death Heads, as well as Plague Proboscises for each one of them as well. And that pretty much makes it my right hand flank on this one. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top at turn number 1, and King Khalifa and I roll off for initiative to see who will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Chaos Legion. I managed to get the initiative on this one, and this photo is taken after the move phase. And as you can see from this photo, I decided not to pull any stops. I'm just moving as quickly as I possibly can across the battlefield to engage these Imperial soldiers. I'm a Chaos Warrior army, Chaos Legion army actually, so because of that, close combat is kind of like in my wheelhouse, and that's pretty much what I'm kind of focusing on for the most part. So the very first thing I do, I decided to charge with the Inglorious, and luckily for me, I got a really good long bomb charge off directly into Blitzen, the Hellblaster volley gun on the left-hand side. By doing that, by sending my Inglorious directly into that war machine, it does tie it up for a turn and prevents it from opening fire onto my units. Hopefully, if I'm really lucky, my Inglorious can just chop that unit apart and just destroy it all together, and then they can overrun real quick directly into Panzer Wolf, which is the steam tank on the left-hand side. At the same time, I also decided to send in the Degenerates and charge them directly into the Vagrant Brotherhood, so that way that unit of Knights can't countercharge any of my forces. My plan here is to have them tie him up for as long as possible. If I'm really lucky, I can get off Curse of the Leper onto that unit of Nurglings and give them up to D3 additional points to their toughness, and makes a really hard tough nut to crack as well. And maybe if I can get Doom and Darkness off with my Lore of Death spells, I could lower the leadership of the Vagrant Brotherhood, make them drop to level weapon skill 1 because they'll fail their fear tests, and hopefully I can just kind of tie them up for the most part. And that's pretty much what I just kind of concentrated on. Everything else in my army just pretty much marches forward. I marched up the Tallymen as well as the Dustmen. I got Horticolic Slimets in tow right behind my Tallymen to lend some support. I also flew the Haster the King in Yellow over to the left-hand side. I put him right next to that forest so that way he's a little bit protected from any incoming cannon fire from the Panzer Bear on the right-hand side. And hopefully I won't be shot at by the cannon from Donner as well, so that part's kind of rough. And then finally, the far right-hand side, I got my Ruination of Prague as well as my Droning Horrors. These guys actually have the hover flying ability. They really don't have flight per se. They actually have hover, which means that they cannot march fly. So because of that, they can only move 10 inches at a time, and that part's really rough for me. So because of that, I just kind of stand right next to those buildings there. Like I said, I'm trying to sweep around the right-hand side and take out the Panzer Baron and hopefully sweep along the Red Company and then engage the Black Company either behind or on the right-hand flank. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of the Inglorious charging directly into Blitzen, and hopefully I can just eliminate that unit entirely off the battlefield by just killing all the crew members, and then I can just take on the Panzer Wolf and hopefully tie it up for a round or two. And also here's a close-up of the Degenerates who've charged directly into the Vagrant Brotherhood. And if I can get my buffs and hexes off like I have planned, I could really, really put a stopping onto this unit and prevent it from doing much of anything with its failed leadership rolls for fear, and at the same time having higher toughness for them to make them last longer. That's pretty much the scheme I'm kind of going with this charge. So here's a close-up of Horticolic Slimex as well as the Dustmen as well as the Tallymen moving forward as quick as they possibly can. And on the left-hand side there you can see my General Haster the King in Yellow. And finally here's a close-up of the Ruination of Prague as well as the Droning Horrors as they try to fly as quick as they possibly can around the buildings and try to engage King Khalifa's forces on the right-hand side. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And in the magic phase, actually I had a really pretty powerful magic phase this turn around. I managed to get 11 power dice on this one, while my buddy King Khalifa's only managed to get 6 on it. So because they had a pretty dominant magic phase, as you can see in this picture. The first thing I do, of course, I try to cast Purple Son of Xerxes off, which is a Lore of Death spell from Haster the King in Yellow. I cast that with 5 power dice, and the reason why I did that was in order to pull some of my opponent's Dispel dice out of his Dispel pool. Luckily for me, King Khalifa kind of fell for the bait. He took 4 of his power dice and decided to try to Dispel it, and he did manage to stop me from casting that spell, leaving him only 2 more Dispel dice to stop any incoming spells I had planned up. So first of all, I cast Curse of the Leper off directly onto my Nurglings. My opponent did try to Dispel it with one of his power dice, but unfortunately for him, though, he failed it. And I managed to give those guys 3 up on their toughness, so because of that, the degenerates are actually toughness 7 Nurglings, which is always a good thing. And the icing on the cake on that part was, well, as I threw 2 dice into Doom and Darkness, casting it directly onto the Vagrant Brotherhood from Haster the King in Yellow. With that spell kind of going off, it also dropped their leadership by 3 points, which means now that this unit is only leadership 5, which is pretty much the same leadership value as Night Goblins. So hopefully what that'll do is they'll fail their fear tests off on my Nurglings, so their weapon skill drops by 1, and hopefully I can kind of tie up this unit for a little while and prevent it from charging. So that was pretty much the scheme I had going with when I moved those guys, my little Nurglings there in the first place. So so far so good, the plan. And with my very last dice, I actually decided to cast the Shroudlings Bound spell from Festus the Leech Lord Empowered. It's a 5-up bound spell which puts everything within 12 inches into hardcover, which protects Haster the King in Yellow, Horticlix Cymex, as well as the Tallyman and the Dustman as well, which is really important because my opponent has a really powerful shooting phase, and that will really protect me against his cannon shots. And like I said, very powerful magic phase, really happy with the result on that. So with the magic phase over with, we go directly to the shooting phase. And in the shooting phase, the Ruination of Prague takes aim and opens fires with death heads directly into the 5-man detachment of Rommel's Rangers. Managed to kill 2 of those guys right off the bat, which is kind of nice. Unfortunately for me, because those guys are detached, they really don't suffer from the panic rules like normal units do, so because of that, they just kind of stand the ground, and everyone is just honky-dory for the most part. And that pretty much makes the shooting phase on this one. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And in the combat phase, all kinds of beautiful, beautiful success just went off during the combat phase. First of all, I start off with the Inglorious, my 3 Nurglings that fought against Blitzen, the Hellblaster volley gun. And luckily for me, I managed to kill the entirety of the crew that was operating that weapon. So just like that, the Hellblaster volley gun has been totally destroyed and is no longer a factor in this battle. I then did quite a quick combat reform to face off directly into the Panzer Wolf, so hopefully I can engage that tank and hold it for a couple of turns if I'm really lucky. At the same time, for my opponent, as you can see in this photo, he pretty much failed his leadership test, so because of that, the Vagrant Brotherhood is suffering from fear, which means their weapon skill drops all the way to weapon skill 1 against my weapon skill 3 Nurglings with toughness 7, which is always really good. Unfortunately for me, I was unable to cause any wounds because, I mean, let's face it, Nurglings have a strength of 3 as opposed to like a 1-up armor save from these guys, so they were perfectly fine from getting attacked by my Nurglings. And at the same time, thanks to my higher toughness as well as their lowered weapon skill, they pretty much flowed their rolls for the most part and were able to injure my Nurglings, which is really awesome. And so because of that, I get to tie up that unit for another turn at least, which is always a good thing. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Empire of the Schwarzwald Free Companies. So that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the Empire, and as you can see in this photo is taken after the move phase, and King Khalifa starts taking the aggressive side and decides to move forward. Unlike other Empire armies, King Khalifa's Empire army is very much kitted out for close combat, and it's also kitted out to actually move and also to engage your enemy, which is actually kind of a rarity for an Empire army because most Empire armies usually just kind of sit back, whittle you down with long-range fire, and then kind of countercharge. But it looks like my buddy King Khalifa is taking the offense on this one, and he's using that really beautiful Griffin formation in order to do that. And in case if you're unfamiliar with the Griffin formation, the Griffin formation was created by the Warhammer.com community for the Empire page, but the Empire forum. And pretty much how it works is that you use skirmishers to protect your parent units as well as your detachment units, so that way you can buy them some time to get into maneuvering position, also whittle down your opponent a little bit, and then exploit the movement so that way your detachments and your main units can just really go to town and destroy your opponents. So as you can see in this photo, he pretty much just marches up everything he possibly can. Rommel's Rangers, as well as his 2 detachments, move up forward to act as a human screen to put themselves as a speed bump between the Tallymen, the Dustmen, as well as my Ruination of Prague from getting to his units. He also marches up the Blue Company, the Black Company, as well as the Red Company with Maximilian Max in tow. At the same time, he does try to move the Panzer Baron, but unfortunately for him, though, he rolled a misfire on his steam points, so because of that, the Panzer Baron does suffer a wound and loses his steam points as well. And as you can see on the left-hand side, he also decides to send in the Panzer Wolf. It goes careening directly into the Inglorious on the left-hand side. He used 3 steam points in order to do that, so he gets D3, he gets 3 D3 impact hits. There we go. He gets that off directly onto the Inglorious, which would be really rough. At the same time, the Vagrant Brotherhood is still currently engaged with the Degenerates, so those guys aren't going anywhere. And that pretty much makes up King Khalifa's movement phase on this one. So here's a close-up of the Panzer Wolf crashing directly into the Inglorious on the left-hand side, as well as the Vagrant Brotherhood, who is still currently engaged with my kitted out and killed out unit of Nurglings from the Degenerates, who are pretty much holding up this huge mob of Inner Circle Knights all by themselves. Really, really proud of those guys. And here's a close-up of his infantry forces, slowly advancing forward in order to engage my own forces, with his units in line, with his skirmishers also using blocking positions. And as you can see on the right-hand side, you can see the Panzer Baron failing its steam point, but its boiler engine check, and also suffering a wound as well. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And just like my previous magic phase, King Khalifa actually had a pretty dominant magic phase as well. He managed to get 12 power dice during this round as well. Managed to get 11 dice from his normal roll, as well as getting an additional channel by having his 2 wizards channel as well. I ended up with, I think, 7 power dice, dispel dice, in order to try to stop his spells. So the first thing he does, of course, is he decides to cast Throne of Vines, and he puts 4 power dice in order to get that spell off. And I tried to stop that spell from getting off. I really did. I actually put 5 of my own power dice into it to make it happen. Unfortunately, I just really flooded my rolls. I rolled a bunch of 1s and 2s for the most part, so because of that, Throne of Vines does get off. It is a remain in place spell. It gives all kinds of bonuses to all his lower life spells as well, which is just all kinds of horrible for me anyways. The next spell he actually casts after that is Flesh to Stone, which he casts directly onto Rommel's Rangers, which also impacts his detachment units as well. And because he has the Throne of Vines spell off directly onto Victor Hellsbrad of the Wilds, it gives any unit that gets Flesh to Stone 4 up toughness, which means that all of these archers will be toughness 7. And he did cast that spell. I did try to dispel, of course, but unfortunately for me, though, I just flood my rolls for the most part. So because that, King Khalifa now has toughness 7 archers that are just standing as human speed pumps between my units from getting to his main lines as well. And then finally, to add insult to injury, he does cast the boosted version of Glittering Robes by Maximilian Max. And because of that, he basically gets everything within 12 inches a 5-up Scaly Skin save. So because of that, all of his archers are now 5-up saved, armor saving, toughness 7 archers. His halberdiers for his main lines, those guys' armor improves up to a 4-up armor. And the same thing happens with his great swords. They actually get a 2-up armor on their swords, so very good result as well. And to add insult to injury, because all those Lore of Life spells went off, the lore attribute where you get to heal a single wound, he decided to put it directly onto the Panzer Baron, so the Panzer Baron is back to full health again, which is just all kinds of devastating for me. Luckily for me, though, my opponent was able to exploit the shooting phase. He did try to open fire with his cannons into Haster the King in Yellow from his great cannon, Donner. But luckily for me, though, he was in hardcover, so because of that, the shot didn't really do much of anything, which is really a good thing. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. And in the combat phase, as you can see in this photo, not much really happened for King Khalifa. His Vagrant Brotherhood was unable to do anything to get through the Degenerates, so that part is pretty nice. So I get to tie up that unit of Inner Circle Knights for another round, which is always a good thing. Unfortunately, though, the Panzer Wolf did manage to grind down an entire base of Nurglings, which is kind of sad for me. But luckily for me, though, I'm playing Chaos Demons and we're unbreakable, so we're not going anywhere. And plus, Nurgle's in Ascendant, so because of that, I don't have to worry about taking instability tests, which is always an awesome thing as well. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Chaos Legion of Nurgle. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Chaos Legion Nurgle, and this photo is taken after the move phase, And at this point I decide I'm just going to commit and try to smash through his main lines and try to finish him off as quickly as possible. So as you can see in this photo, the first thing I decided to do is I declare a charge with my tallyman directly into that 5-man unit of Rommel's Rangers. My opponent, King Cleaver, decides to stand and shoot as a result. Luckily for me though, he didn't get any shots off, and I also managed to land that long range charge, which is kind of nice as well. I do exactly the same thing with the Dustman, charge directly into the 10-man unit of Rommel's Rangers. He of course stands and shoots as a result. I survive a lot of shots. I do manage to close a distance, which is always a good thing. And at the same time, after those charges are done, I decided to move the rest of my units. The first thing I decided to do is fly over my Ruination of Prague. I fly them directly over the Red Company and land right smack dab behind them, facing to the back of the Panzer Baron, as well as the Red Company and the Black Company. At the same time, I also sweep around the right-hand flank around that tower with the droning horrors, so that way they can also start hitting from the flank or from the back of King Khalifa's main lines, which is always a good thing as well. And the final movement I actually decided to focus on was on Horticolex Slimex as well as Haster the King in Yellow. Horticolex Slimex just kind of marches over the left-hand side to lend some support to the Tallyman, and at the same time I march fly Haster the King in Yellow all the way around the left-hand flank, so that way they get a nice little flank charge directly into the Vagrant Brotherhood. Hopefully I can charge my general into that unit. They'll still have Doom and Darkness on them, giving them -3 to their leadership. I'll be able to disrupt these guys so they won't be able to have their rank bonuses, and hopefully it'll be enough to make these guys either break or at least lose combat, so that way I can last another turn, which is, you know, ideal either way you look at it, which is always a good thing. And that pretty much makes the move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of Haster the King in Yellow getting ready to charge into the left-hand flank of the Vagrant Brotherhood. You can also see that the Vagrant Brotherhood is still engaged with my Degenerates. At the same time, my Inglorious are still currently engaged with the Panzerwolf. And here's a close-up of my Tallyman charging directly into Rommel's Rangers, as well as the Dustman doing exactly the same thing. And you can see Horticolex Slimex there in the left-hand corner. He's just landing there to kind of lend any support he can whatsoever. And finally, here's a close-up of the right-hand flank. You can see the Ruination of Prague has just kind of flown completely over the Red Company. We're getting ready to charge in the back of the Black Company as well as the Red Company. And you can also see my droning horrors there on the right-hand side sweeping around the tower, getting ready to exploit the weaknesses here on the right-hand flank as well. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. Unfortunately for me, the magic phase was not as powerful as it was in the previous turn. However, with that being said though, I did manage to get a couple of spells and still keeping them playing. First of all, Doom and Darkness, I decided to recast that with Haster the King Yellow directly into the Vagrant Brotherhood, and that spell went off without a hitch as well. King Cleave was unable to stop it. He just pretty much flipped his rolls for the most part. So because of that, the Vagrant Brotherhood does suffer -3 leadership, and hopefully that will cause them to fail their fear tests when they're going against my little Degenerates, which is always a good thing as well. And the only other spell I was able to get off was once again Shroudlings, which puts hard cover within everybody within 12 inches of Festus Leech Lord, which is always a good thing to, you know, my opponent will suffer negatives to hit against me, at the same time also protects me from range attacks as well. And that pretty much makes the magic phase. So with the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because I don't have any, and we go directly to the combat phase. Alright, so here's a close-up of the combat phase. This photo is taken after the combat phase for the most part. And as you can see this photo, I did actually get pretty lucky on this one. Did manage to kill a couple members of the Rommel's Rangers. If I remember correctly, I managed to kill 3 of those guys, which is pretty awesome as well. Unfortunately for my opponent though, with combined with my combat resolution from my rank bonuses, as well as my standard bearer in that unit, as well as the fact that I charged and the casualties that I caused, he was unable to stop me for the most part because he's just archers for the most, mainly. He did of course had to take a break test. Unfortunately for him, he did fail his break test. He actually failed it twice, so because of that, my Dustmen overrun through the archers and go directly into the Black Company. And the reason why I'm telling you this and not showing you a photo of it is because I forgot to take a photo of me running through this main line, and that's exactly what happened. Meanwhile, over here on the left-hand flank, the exact same kind of drama takes place between the Tallymen as well as the 5-man detachment of Rommel's Rangers. My Tallymen were able to kill them all to the very last man, so because of that, they overrun, they go charging directly into the Blue Company, which is on the left-hand side. At the same time this is happening, I actually managed to kill a couple members of the Vagrant Brotherhood, which, if you could believe it or not, actually managed to kill 2 members of the Vagrant Brotherhood, which is all kinds of awesome. Unfortunately for King Khalifa, though, he did fail his fear test, so because of that, it did drop his guys down to level 1 weapon skill, but it did not deter from him actually destroying one entire base of Nurglings, which is about 4 wounds, as well as putting 2 more floating wounds on another base as well. So these guys were just high-hoing their way with their great weapons going directly into my Nurglings, so that part was pretty tragic for me anyways. Luckily for me though, like I said, I am a demonic, so I don't have to worry about taking break tests, so I don't really go anywhere. At the same time, on the left-hand side, my Inglorious were unable to cause any damage whatsoever to the Panzerwolf. At the same time, the Panzerwolf's engineer was able to do anything back to my Nurglings. And that pretty much makes it the combat phase on this one. So with combat phase over, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Empire. So that takes us directly to the bottom of turn number 2 for the Empire, and this photo is taken after the movement phase. And for the most part, not much movement really takes place for King Khalifa. Pretty much all of his major forces are already currently engaged from my previous turn. However, he does decide to declare a charge with his 3 archers from Rommel's Rangers. Those guys have to take an insane courage test, of course, to see if these guys actually stand their ground, because they watched all their brothers being slaughtered by the Dustmen as well as the Tallymen. Unfortunately for me, King Khalifa rolled a Snake Eyes perfectly on his very first try, so because of those 3 archers decided to charge directly into the Dustmen on the right hand flank, which is a really bad spot for them to be in, because by being charged in the flank they end up disrupting my entire unit, which means that my Dustmen lose their rank bonuses, so they don't get anything of that when it comes to their combat res, which is absolutely terrifying, because especially when you consider I'm taking on an entire horde of Imperial Greatswords, so weapon skill 4, strength 6 killers with heavy armor, with full plate armor no less, so that part's could be proved to be very, very dangerous for me. At the same time, he also decides to send in the Panzer Baron, charges it directly into the Ruination of Prague, crashing directly into my right-hand flank, using 4 steam points in order to do that, so that part is kind of rough as well. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase on that one. So here's a close-up of the movement phase taking place over here on the left-hand side of the battlefield. As you can see, the Panzerwolf is still currently engaged with the Inglorious on the left-hand side, and same thing with the Vegan Brotherhood, they're still currently engaged with the Degenerates. And meanwhile, over here on the right hand side, the Blue Company is still engaged with the Tallymen, and that pretty much makes it the pictures here on the left hand side. And finally, here's a close-up of the right hand flank for King Khalifa's forces. As you can see in this photo, the Black Company is charged directly into the front of the Dustmen. At the same time, those 3 archers are hitting me right there on the right hand flank, catching me in a pincer attack and also disrupting me at the same time. And then finally, you can see on the right hand side, the Panzer Baron goes careening across the battlefield directly into the right hand flank of the Ruination of Prague, and that's just all kinds of wonderful for me. So with the movement phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. So with that, we go directly to the magic phase, and once again, King Khalifa had a pretty successful magic phase, all things considered. First thing he decides to do, he decides to pull out a couple of my Dispel dice by casting some battle prayers from his Archlector. The first thing, of course, he does, he actually casts off the ability to give his unit flaming attacks in close combat, which is really bad for my Dustmen because they have regen saves, so needless to say, I kind of fell for the bait on that one, and I managed to throw a couple of my Dispel dice to keep that one from going off. In response to that, King Khalifa decided to cast one more battle prayer real quick with his Archlector, casting the 5 of ward save spell. So because of that unit of Black Company Greatswords have a 5 of ward save now, which is all kinds of impressive. And the very last spell he was able to cast off of them was Flesh to Stone, so now those Greatswords are now Toughness 7, Strength 6, Great Weapon, Plate Wield Armor wielding 5-up ward saving warriors, which is just all kinds of bad news for me as well. And that pretty much makes the magic phase for this one. And in the magic phase, disaster strikes. Donner decides to take aim directly onto Hassett the King in Yellow and open up with a Grape Shot. And unfortunately for me, he managed to get 10 shots off with his blast of ball bearings going directly into Hassett the King in Yellow. And he managed to kill my general with one fell swoop. And I really hate it when my demon princes die in my battle reports. It really does. It really bothers me because those guys are worth a hell of a lot of points, and I just lost them in one fell swoop, which is really, really sad for me at the same time. So with the shooting phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase. So in the combat phase, end up being an atrocious loss for yours truly for the most part. Because I have higher initiative and because my opponent is fighting with great weapons, I decided to go first in my close combat. So the first thing, of course, I have to do is I have to declare a challenge because the Eyes of the Gods special ability. So because of that, I decided to declare a charge with Festus the Leech Lord because I am required to do so. My opponent decides to answer the call with his own general. So Archlector Gregor von Königsmark decides to answer the call. all. Now, luckily for the both of us, nothing really much happened in the close combat between the two. I wasn't able to cause any damage onto him, and he was unable to cause any damage to me, so, nothing much really happened from there. However, the rest of the combat between our regular troops was completely one-sided. As you can see in this photo, my opponent managed to kill 6 of my dustmen in pretty good fashion for the most part. Well, and to be honest, I did get kind of lucky on that one. I was making a bunch of regen saves like it was nobody's business. Not to mention the hardcover bonus also really helped me out as well. However, I was unable to cause any damage back to him, and that's where the problem comes in, because he had 5 award saves. He also had up to 7. Even with the poison attacks that I got with my fighters, it just ended up being all kinds of bad for me. So, needless to say, I lost by 6 points right off the bat because he caused wounds on me. He also has a battle standard bearer, which also gives him a grand total of 7. Plus he has 3 ranks on top of that, which gives him a grand total of 10. Now, I have a standard bearer as well, but that gets negated by his standard bearer. Now, normally I would have 2 extra ranks that I use for my rank bonus, but because I'm disrupted by those archers there on the right-hand side, I don't get any rank bonuses. So because of that, I lose this combat result by 10. Now, because he also has a Griffin standard on this unit, he gets double bonuses for his rank bonuses, so that actually means they actually lose by 13, which means I have to roll snake eyes to keep my guys from breaking.
Let's get the hell out of here!
Needless to say, I don't make my break tests and I fly back 5 inches. Now, the nice thing about the Griffin banner, of course, is that my opponent cannot pursue me because the Griffin banner gives him double rank bonuses, but he can't pursue. However, the 3 archers who are on my flank can have no problem pursuing me whatsoever. And as you can see in this photo, those archers ran back, I think, something like 9 or 10 inches. They ran directly to the church. And those 3 archers, man, those guys must have been ninja archers because they chopped down the entire unit of dustmen, killing all my Chaos Warriors Nurgle, and also killing Festus the Leech Lord at the exact same time, which is all kinds of crazy. And then afterwards, my opponent does a quick combat reform and faces off to the left-hand side to charge me directly into the left-hand flank against my Tallyman. And I can already tell right now that things are not looking very good right now for my army at this point. Unfortunately for me, though, the Tallyman did not really good in close combat. It was really, really bad. My opponent managed to kill, I think, 5 of my Tallymen in close combat, which is really atrocious. And I only managed to kill 3 of them in response, so needless to say, it was not good. He does receive some rank bonuses as well, as so do I, for charging, so for the most part, we're pretty much just stuck in a stalemate for the most part, with nobody going anywhere at this point. So I'm not doing too badly because my Tallymen are still engaged in close combat, but, this should have been a gimme. This should have been an easy kill for these guys, and they did not perform like I had expected. To make matters worse, over here in the left-hand flank, the Panzerwolf had no problem grinding down the rest of my Inglorious into nasty green oozy paste over there on the left-hand side of the battlefield. And then finally, the Vagrant Brotherhood was finally able to finish off the last of my degenerates. And so just like that, both of my units of Nurgles are now dead, and the left-hand flank is now completely free and open for my buddy King Khalifa. Meanwhile, on the far right-hand side of the battlefield, things did not go according to plan for the most part. I just lost one of my play drones from the Ruination of Prague, as well as had 2 wounds put on another one as well, just from the sheer amount of grind attacks that the Panzer Bear was able to bring with its impact hits when it charged directly into my right-hand flank. So that part was extremely painful. I really don't mind telling you that. But the lucky thing that's going on for me, though, is that my demons are unbreakable, so they don't have to worry about taking a break test, so they kind of stand their ground. At the same time, though, they are standing their ground against a steam tank, but them's the brick, I guess. So with the combat phase over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Chaos Legion of Nurgle. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Chaos Legion of the Nurgle, and this photo is taken after the move phase, and it's this point that I realize it's go for rogue time. So with a YOLO in the air, I decided to charge in the rest of my forces directly into King Khalifa's forces. The first thing I do is I charge in Horticolic Slime Mix, my exalted hero on Warhammer Nurgle. It goes tearing across the battlefield directly into the Panzerwolf, so hopefully I can engage that steam tank from preventing it from getting to my Tallyman. At the same time, I also charge in the droning horrors directly into the back of the Panzer Bearing, catching that steam tank in a pincer attack. And that pretty much makes it my move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of Horticolic Slimix sliming directly into Panzerwolf, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to win this combat or not, or what, but I gotta do something to stop this steam tank from getting into the juicy flank of my Tallyman. And here's a close-up of my droning horrors charging directly into the back of the Panzerbaron, and that tank is exactly where I want it to be, or at least that's what I tell myself, just because it's stuck in a pincer attack now between my Ruination of Prague as well as my droning horrors. So with the movement phase over with, we skip the magic phase because all my spellcasters are dead. We also skip the shooting phase because all my forces are engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. So the combat phase is kind of a good news, bad news type situation. The good news is I managed to kill 5 members of the Red Company, but it didn't really matter because they stood their ground and nothing much happened. At the same time though, the Steam Tank of course, as well as Red Company, managed to kill off one more member of the Ruination of Prague, so only got one of my play drones left, which is really sad. At the same time, the droning horrors were pretty much combat ineffective against the Panzer Baron. You would think I would at least get one poison attack off, but no, nothing really came off on that, so because of that, the Panzer Baron is perfectly fine, because, let's face it, steam tanks are built to be for tough. Meanwhile, close combat on the left-hand flank was extremely lackluster to say the least. I did manage to kill 2 members of the Blue Company, which is pretty awesome, but the members of the Blue Company was able to kill 3 of my plague bearers, so that part was really unexpected as well. This little detachment of Blue Company halberdiers, man, these guys are fighting like, you know, like they can't miss, because they're just absolutely just tearing up my tallyman. Luckily for me, even though I lost the combat, I am unbreakable because I am demonic, so not much really happens from there. And then finally, the combat between Horticola Slimex as well as Panzerwolf was just pretty much lackluster. I do land a couple attacks, even a poison attack or 2, but unfortunately he just managed to pass his armor saves like a champ because, let's face it, steam tanks aren't going to break too easily in close combat. So that pretty much makes the combat phase on this one. So with the combat phase, we will go directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Empire. So that takes directly to the bottom of turn number 3 for the Empire, and King Khalifa decides to go in for the kill. First thing that he decides to do is he decides to declare a charge with the Black Company, and he has no problem whatsoever charging into the right hand flank of the Tallyman. He then declares a charge with the Vagrant Brotherhood, who of course have no problem charging directly into the front half on the left hand side of the Tallyman as well. At the same time, he also decides to maneuver his archers, the 3 remaining archers he has left from Rommel's Rangers. They march back over to the right-hand side to deal with the Ruination of Prague that's currently engaged in close combat with the Red Company as well as the Panzer Baron, and that pretty much makes up his move phase on this one. So here's a close-up of the Vagrant Brotherhood as well as the Blue Company as well as the Black Company charging into a 3-way attack directly into the Tallyman, and I can already tell right now that this is going to have a really bad outcome for my demons. And here's a close-up of the Panzer Baron as well as the Red Company, still currently engaged with the Droning Horrors as well as the Ruination of Prague. And you can see the 3 members of Rommel's Rangers trying to move up as quick as they can to get in on the action. So with the move phase over with, we go directly to the magic phase. And once again, King Khalifa just had a really awesome magic phase this turnaround. Managed to get off the fight-off ward save with his battle prayers directly into the Black Company, so now that entire unit has 5 ward saves. And he also managed to get off Flesh to Stone this time onto the Red Company, so because of that, those halberdiers in the Red Company now are toughness 7, which is really hard for me to go up against with my plague drones, so that part was pretty crazy as well. So with the magic phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because everybody is currently engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. So starting over here on the right hand flank on the combat phase, my opponent was able to kill one of my droning horrors from my plague bearers. So because of that, one of my plague drones is killed because the droning horrors are not really that good at close combat, I guess, especially because against the steam tank. Meanwhile, combat between the one lone member of the Ruination of Prague as well as the Red Company pretty much just kind of goes back and forth with nobody getting killed, and it pretty much just ends in a stalemate for that part. So, you know, here's just small blessings, I guess. Meanwhile, combat over here on the left-hand flank, that combat was absolutely horrific. I don't mind telling you. In the end, I was able to kill 3 members of the Blue Company as well as 2 members of the Vagrant Brotherhood, so that's what it was. Now, if you'll notice in this photo, you'll notice that half of my plague bearers are still alive, with 14 of them in the back. This photo is actually kind of an illusion, because what ended up happening is that he ended up managing to kill 20. Managed to kill 21, I think it's 20 or 21, I forgot. I think it was 21. He managed to kill 21 of my plague bearers with all the attacks from the Vagrant Brotherhood, as well as the Blue Company, as well as the Black Company as well. In essence, I just stopped maneuvering, moving plague bearers off the thing just because I knew these guys weren't going to last very long. So because of that, I just kind of stopped taking off my models off of the movement trays because it was absolutely atrocious. Not to mention the Panzerwolf also managed to put 4 wounds directly onto Horticola Slimex as well as Mulch, and I wasn't able to cause anything back to that Empire steam tank. So things are definitely going bad for me, and at this point I realize I'm not going to be able to pull this one into a victory. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us directly to the end of the game, with the Empire winning on this one. Because of all the losses I've taken so far, there is no way I'm going to be able to recount my losses. Just no way whatsoever. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the After Action Report, because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
Alright, so now it's time for the After Action Report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the After Action Report for the Golden Age Battle Report number 78, and this would end up being a defeat for yours truly. My buddy King Khalifa managed to score 2,630 victory points, and I only managed to score 330. So for my losses, I lost Hastur the King in Yellow, Festus the Leech Lord Empowered, Barnabas the Scrivener, the Dustman, the Tallyman, the Inglorious, as well as the Degenerates. King Khalifa managed to lose Bromwell's Rangers as well as Blitzen. And to simply put it, King Khalifa is like one of the best Empire General players I've ever seen on the battlefield. The guy's use of the Griffin formation, of using the skirmishers to run interference so that way he can maneuver his forces into place, is just beyond excellent. Not to mention he had some pretty powerful magic as well as combat phases throughout this battle, so it was pretty devastating for against my forces. Now, shooting was pretty much negated for most of this battle because of the Shroudling's ability, but then again, his armies also kit out to kill for close combat, because if steed tanks can't shoot you, they are just more than happy to run you over and to grind you into red paste with those steel shod wheels of theirs as well. Not to mention Lore of Life. When you take that spell, that magic system, and you combine it with Lore of Metal, it ends up a pretty devastating combination where you're just buffing the heck out of your units. I mean, this Battle Pro just pretty much proves it with 5 up Scaly Skin saves, 4 up Toughness, regeneration saves, all kinds of craziness. There's just kind of going on for this one as well. Not to mention that Throne of Vines as +4 toughness, it's just beyond good, especially when you're putting it on skirmishing archers, because those guys literally became living shields that just kind of stopped me from doing anything and just kind of stopped my forces dead in its track as well. I was really sad that he killed my Demon Prince with Grape Shot. I will admit I wasn't really paying attention when I decided to do that. I moved my Demon Prince over the left-hand flanking. He was going to think he was completely fine, because for a little while there I forgot that cannons can shoot Grape Shot. I just absolutely forgot about that. I forgot that that was an actual rule, and King Khalifa made me pay with that mistake. So because of that, oh, my poor general, he got killed on that one as well. Either way you look at it, though, this was still an excellent game against an amazing opponent. Love playing against King Khalifa, and as always, I am looking forward to the rematch on this one. So that's good to do this with you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys next one. You peace out, and you guys stay classy.